Hi everyone, and welcome to the VRcade Podcast, and a podcast for arcades by arcades. Now, the last episode we got over 400 views, which is awesome. We weren't expecting to get that many, so thank you all for joining, and thank you for watching today as well. Today we have a guest from SynthesisVR. He is called Shabeer. How are you doing, Shabeer?
Good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. And then we have Mr. Chun. How are you, Chun?
Hello, everyone. Good, thank you. And how are you? How about you?
All good, all good. And Mr. Roland?
Hey, everyone. Also doing good.
Nice. So, today, Synthesis VR, for those of you that don't know, is a licensing platform where people can license various games. So we're going to talk to Shabeer about his career and how he got into it and just how Synthesis VR works. Now, we do have a teaser trailer for an upcoming game, which is called Plush Rush. So I'm going to play that now real quick, and then we will be back in a second. Right, there you go. Thanks for watching that little teaser trailer. There will be more coming in the near future, but for now, it's just the teaser trailer, and I really like it. So yeah, good job. So
That's good.
Shabeer, tell us about how you got into VR.
So it's a long story short, but Kaman and I, I'm not sure if you've heard about Kaman, but he's also the co-founder of SynthesisVR.
Mm-hmm.
So we've known each other for more than 17, 18 years.
Wow.
But we used to work, I was in telecom and he was in telecom as well. And we used to work together, and then it was getting pretty boring because of the development, the business side of it. So we thought, why not do something much more fun? So when the Oculus, the first DK1 kit came on Kickstarter, everybody started talking about VR, and we got curious as well. So we thought, why not explore this? So in 2016, I went to the San Francisco, the GTC, and tried all the VR, the Omni, the Virtuix Omni, the Vive, the OG Vive, and then I was hooked onto it. My first game was, I think, Brookhaven Experiment, so that's still one of my favorite games. So it's like one of those old games, but the first experience was really cool. So we thought, this is something that would be nice to do, a little bit more fun than the telecom industry. So then we decided to open our own arcade, because at that time in 2016 there were not too many locations or developers in VR. It was just a handful, I think. Job Simulator, Arizona Sunshine, and Raw Data. These were like the three popular games at that time. And
where did you guys open the first arcade? What was the first location that you had?
In Los Angeles, it was called VR Territory. So we opened our first location in 2016 in VR Territory. It was one of the very first in the world. V and then Control V were the only locations at that time. And there was another one from Private Label, I think. So there were these three locations at that time, and people would come in and take a look at. So at that time, we were selling technology, and we still wanted to, and everything was done manually through, and it was hard even talking to the developers about licensing and stuff, because nobody knew this was even a thing at that time. So we met with the Raw Data people and everyone else, and it was crazy even convincing them. But soon, locations started popping up, and by 2017 there were hundreds, but when we initially started, even people didn't know what VR was. The customers were even scared to put the headsets on and stuff like that. We had a fun time because we would see like customers running away. Even like you would see this buff guy, tall buff guy. He would play this Brookhaven. He would get so scared he would just run away. So it was crazy. And Richie's Plank was another really cool experience. You would see people just crawling on the floor and stuff like that. So it was a cool experience. But when we started running the arcade, that's a little. I guess the question was, how did I get into VR? So I guess
no, it's really cool because you were really on the sort of first wave of VR arcades and at the very beginning of it, right? Which means, now I guess almost 6 years later, right? You kind of saw the entire development from having this very first location to with the sort of, as you mentioned, OG vibes through to today where you have, I think, design-wise, very different setups.
Yeah, definitely. But still, that's one of my favorite headsets because it's pretty robust, except for the controllers that would always break. And then one of my employees had a cool fix for the thumb pad because that was the very first part to break. You would have to buy so many controllers just to fix the thumb pad. But then we've tried cool fix and then it started working. So that was like a crazy experience. And then soon you had to put like a small plastic on top of the thumb pad button. Once you remove it, and that for some crazy reason it would fix it. So we would cut these Starbucks, the water cups, and then we would make a small square and then put it on inside the thumb pad and it would work. So it works. I don't know how it would work, but it just worked. So it was mainly the click, that click wasn't registering. So people had a lot of issues with that OG controller.
Yeah, and I guess back then not a lot of people were using VR, so it's kind of tried different things out, and somebody just cut out a bit of a cup and gave it a go. Yeah,
it was.
Come.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, with Territory VR, what is that still going, or did you kind of sell it, or?
Yeah, so VR Territory, we had 4 locations in the end. So one in Georgia, Savannah, another one in Canada, St. Catharines, another one in Florida, Orlando. So we had 4 locations, but then when COVID came in, we decided, and also Synthesis was getting pretty busy, so I didn't have time to juggle between both because, running an arcade, Roland can attest to it. It's pretty busy. It's crazy. So, and also the paperwork, so I thought, let's just close that down and concentrate on Synthesis.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a bit of a similar experience when it came to when we started VRilliant. We actually had sort of a real escape room business where we physically still built the rooms before we switched to VR, and it was a similar decision process that we saw that we can't really focus on both to the extent that we'd like to, and that's where we also decided that it's best to sort of pass on the escape room business and then fully focus on VR. Yeah. So I completely understand the decision.
Yeah,
although I'd love to say that we got around the whole hacking our own hardware, with these kind of hacked fixes of things that just seem to work. So when we started in 2020, we decided the best time to start was in the middle of a global pandemic. So we opened September 2020 and then closed October 2020. So it was just excellent timing. But it was actually we had a similar story with the backpack PCs, that the backpack PCs we bought turned out not to have enough voltage for the headsets we planned on using them with. So we had to sort of separately install the little alternator into each of the PCs to then have the right current to work with the headset. And just these iterative hacking processes are quite good.
I believe they call it MacGyverism. Is that right?
Yes.
How did the idea of Synthesis VR How did that come about? From having the arcade locations to going into synthesis?
Thing was, even in telecom, our whole background was into development, especially common, and I was running the business side of it. And when we were running VR territory, as I said, we were doing everything manually. You had to like run around to each headset and put the players together, and that was taking a lot. And you had to have a lot more employees. So we want to do something that was a little bit more feasible, much more easier. So we decided to test something out on our own, see how we can make it easier to run, whether we can launch multiple stations together, take in reservations, things like that. Since our background was in the development side, was a little bit, I guess the next step would have been, the logical next step would have been, how we could streamline this process. And then once we started doing that and, it started becoming easy, we tested with real-time employees. I mean, with the employees, with the real-time customers, feedback, everything, so it was pretty nice to test everything at our own location to see what works, what doesn't work. And then we started seeing other people opening up locations and, they wanted something similar. So we, gave them to test and, that's how Synthesis was born. So in a small process like that.
So was the idea always to build a platform through which you can help other arcades, or was it really, or was the whole thing first, we need a better system for our own arcade to be able to run the games more efficiently? Then that kind of grew into it.
I would think the latter, like we needed something to run at our own location in a better way. But then when other people started requesting it and they started liking it, then we thought, what, this, because our whole, as I mentioned, was the software, the development side, it made it much more easier, I would say, to, move into that process.
What about the name Synthesis? Like, where did that come from? What was the kind of inspiration behind that name?
I wouldn't say any. I don't want to give like a crazy story or anything like that. It's just like some made up story. So it was just, I guess we were just brainstorming, me and Kaman, some multiple names. I guess the name Synthesis is associated with software. And if you have, I'm not sure if you've heard about it, like, like there's so many like synergy, synthetic, synthesis, all these names. So we thought, something similar. We liked it. And Kaman is the one I think suggested it. So we really liked it. So I thought, let's just go with it. And then even the logo, I just got inspiration from the South Korean flag and the Olympic, the logos where it's like twirling together. It's like yin and a yang, and we just made some logo, and then it just worked well. So there was no like crazy $100 million idea or anything like that. It's just
no, but I like how specific it was and the logo came from the South Korean flag.
So
what makes Synthesis VR so unique to other platforms?
I mean, that's something we can be proud of because we're constantly, I'm not sure if Roland can attest to it, I'm not sure, but we are constantly developing the platform. It's not something that's stagnant. We are always trying to develop. Even before mixed reality was a thing, we incorporated mixed reality with Synthesis platform. So if you had OBS and if you had like a webcam, you could pretty much do mixed reality through Synthesis and record on the fly. Even that's something that we used at VR territory with all the birthday parties and stuff, so the kids and the parents can see. So these are some of the features that no one even had before, and we started doing. And it was easier for us also to test these with our locations at hand. And people would come and ask us, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" And Kaman being the genius he is, I think we started doing crazy stuff. And even now, I think we are one of the very first platforms to do free roam and room scale at the same time. even before free roam. When people started doing free roam, it was just the free roam. They had their own launcher, but you could do something where a third-party platform could do these things. And now we do support like the PC-based headsets, the Android headsets like Quest 2, the Focus 3s, the Picos. So we are constantly developing. So I think that's something that we stand out. Like even though we don't have the best games, or we might not have something, but we, as a platform, we are constantly developing, trying to make sure that whatever new is in the industry, we are trying to cover it, at least help people. And another thing that's I think would stand out is our customer service. I think that we can be proud of because we are always.
So I think we have a specific Rotten Apple Discord for case that use Rotten Apple, right? Where we're also sort of providing our own customer service to answer questions that come through. But I think everyone who's in that Discord also knows Kamen, who, if you're still watching, Kamen, hi, just as the standout go-to person on technical questions, who's always ready to help. So that, I have to say, you guys are doing an incredible job at. And I also think that, right, what you mentioned, the approach of continuous development and continuously developing a platform, especially in a market like VR where it's changing really fast, it's definitely the right way to go.
Yeah, so we don't worry about anything else, but just continue improving what we're offering, and I think that would change definitely.
So what makes up the Synthesis VR product line? Sorry, I got some feedback there. What makes up the Synthesis product line?
What makes us up? Oh, so mainly it's just as you mentioned, we provide two different types of products. One is the Synthesis subscription, where the management part of it. So where you could use Synthesis to manage your location, take in bookings, and so many other things. These are some of the small aspects, but with Synthesis, you can pretty much do anything you want in VR, or like even set up your own to attendant, or an attendantless kiosk. You can set up pop-ups. You can even control Internet of Things like devices and stuff through Synthesis. You can take in bookings. We have APIs, webhooks, things like that, so that way you can create your own solution if you wanted. There are some. We did something with Spark XR, where for the Tourism Board of Saudi, they created their own enclave with fans and heated pads and stuff, and then they use Synthesis for the customer journey, where you will register the customers, then start the session. You can even use, last year IAPA, we kind of displayed like a kiosk system where you could use Synthesis to create a kiosk. So you can pretty much do a lot of things with Synthesis. It's more like a huge platform. So that's on the platform side of it. And then on the licensing side of it, we license games. We have like our own content store where people can come in and choose the games they want to license, and then we track everything, and they only pay what they play for. So it's a pretty easy, robust model where they can license games and start using it for their customers.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
So I think there's a couple of things that I think are worth clarifying. This is something that I, for example, didn't know for a long time. IAPA, that's the International Amusement.
Yeah,
I don't know what the rest of the letters stand for, but it's a large expo basically focused on location-based amusement.
Yeah. So if you come to Orlando, Florida, go ahead. Sorry.
So IAPA, let's stay on that. So what's IAPA? I haven't been. You have. What's the?
So IAPA is like the largest show, especially the Orlando one. It happens every November, and now they have IAPA Europe and an IAPA Asia as well. So it's like one of the most largest shows for all the family entertainment attractions. So if you are running an attraction, that's where to be. You get. It's not just for VR, it's for everything. So you get all the arcade machines, all sorts of attractions. You even have like
roller coaster.
roller coasters in there as well inside the show. So you get all the stuff, like, so they display everything, water park. So that's where you would see like what's new, what can be done. And every year it's been a huge VR presence, slowly. So, and people who are buying stuff, they make a decision coming to IAPA Orlando. So if you want to sell something, that's the best place to be.
And the second thing that that you mentioned before that I want to ask into a bit is you mentioned the kiosk system or kiosk. For anyone who's watching who doesn't necessarily operate or run an arcade, what's a kiosk?
Kiosk is like, if you've been to any arcade, I don't know, Dave and Buster or any other arcades, you put a coin in and you can start playing. So something similar you can do with VR as well. There are some, there are examples like that are already, but I'm not sure anything is like totally attendant free, because VR, there's always something going on. So that is the goal. So we are also striving towards it, but at least with Synthesis, you can pretty much go through the customer journey. A customer can come in, he can put his name, he can select his time, he can choose a game, and then you can pay for whatever. You can accept credit cards, you can put a token, stuff like that. So Synthesis supports all that. Also, we have like something called a demo mode. Also, we can detect when the headset is actually moving and then start the game when the headset is moving, and when the headset is idle, then the game stops. So these types of functions would make running a kiosk much more easier.
And then, so you mentioned, I guess, three aspects. One is the arcade management, reservation management. Second part is the licensing and content licensing, and the third part is the kind of kiosk system that you're also looking into. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's just not the kiosk, but the arcade management and the licensing are more like the straightforward parts of Synthesis, but using Synthesis with our pro features like APIs, webhooks, and all the other crazy stuff that we have, you can build your own kiosk, you can build your own solution. So that's what Synthesis offers, So it's not just for kiosk. Kiosk is just an example.
So which products would you recommend to which users? Or who do you think it would be best suited for, like the reservation system in part? Or do you see people using the reservation system but not necessarily content licensing? What's your experience been?
So I guess initially people wanted the management as well as, so it depends, what sort of an arcade you're running. If you're running a multi-dimensional arcade where you have multiple entertainment, not just VR, then you might use a different reservation or a ticketing system that supports, like maybe if you're running a bowling or something, you might not like using Synthesis reservation because you already have something for your bowling or, for your laser tag or something like that. So in that case, the launch or the management, just the management aspect of it would make sense. But if you're running like a VR arcade, then you could use Synthesis for your reservations, for your management, your licensing, and everything. So it basically depends on what you're running. If you're running a large scale family entertainment center, they all run those cashless card systems. So for those, they don't have any reservations, more like walk-in customers and stuff. So you only need Synthesis to like license, launch, manage that part of it. And then you can use the cashless system, incorporate it with Synthesis, and you can deduct the credits and stuff like that. So it depends what you're running. But if you're like a regular VR arcade with just VR, then you could use Synthesis for everything.
Lots of
Very cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of things going on there. That's a lot, and considering that it wasn't really planned, like, was it, for it to kind of snowball into all of this kind of stuff, or did you ever have like a vision that it would kind of get a lot bigger?
I know our vision was always, once we started doing it, we always want to continue developing it and make sure that we support So, Kaman would go into his lab and, not talk to anybody and start building stuff. And then, so, that worked out well. So, yeah. So, and also when there's a new product and when customers ask, can we do this? Can we do that? We take it as a challenge and, we
Yeah.
try to do it. So, but that's something that's worked well for us, but it has also not, in certain cases, we might get too complicated and people might see us a little bit more complicated than the regular systems, but it is what it is.
Yeah. What trends are you seeing in the arcade market as a platform operator? What kind of trends are you seeing at the moment?
I think Roland could attest, be more experienced on that, but in my experience of talking about the new trends, right, at the arcades.
Mm-hmm.
So from the requests we are getting and what we are seeing, it's more going into the wireless streaming side of it, as well as, I would say, the standalone headsets are going to take precedence more than the PC-based headsets. Especially the war, the inflation is what's, I think, accelerating that thing, because in Europe, because we deal with a lot of European locations, the power, the electricity seems very expensive compared to America and Canada. So, running a PC, high-end PC might be very, costly, especially, if you're running for like 12 hours every day. So people are looking into going the standalone route with just one PC, multiple headsets. So that way, the initial investment is much lower, as well as they could provide a similar experience. Graphics wise, it might not be the same, but now with Focus 3 and the Quest 3 and the Pros, they're coming up, they're catching up. I would still say, you can match the PC graphics, but in terms of like making it much more easier to use, the cost effectiveness. So I do see a trend where people are slowly going to move towards the standalone headsets.
Yeah. That's even like at home as well. Standalone is the biggest one, isn't it? Yeah. Well, for those that don't really know or haven't been to a VR arcade, what's the biggest difference between like VR arcade and doing VR at home?
Before, that's why I tell you, even the locations that are starting right now is VR is not a technology anymore. It's an experience now. It's a much more like a social experience. So you're selling an experience. You're not selling technology. It's not like going into a movie theater and trying to see IMAX, but you're trying to watch the latest Avenger movie or something, which is crazy. So so you got to sell that experience at VR. So that's the biggest thing. People come when you're playing at home. It's not like a social experience, even though sometimes you might play a multiplayer game. You can have fun with friends. Chill out, watch them play, make an ass out of themselves, and but you're still watching them. Having fun and stuff like that. So that's the fun part of it, and also, for some reason, kids love VR more than adults. We've had so many birthday parties before, and they love it. So it's, I guess, the social experience is the biggest difference. And the other thing is, if you're living in an expensive city like LA, San Francisco, or even Toronto, my experience, space is of premium, and to play a good VR, you need at least a 10 feet by 10 feet space and stuff like that. So, and for all your friends to have that kind of a space, and then it's hard. So I guess the arcades are here to stay.
Yeah, I have like 3 headsets, but not a big play space. So like, if there's 3 of us playing, walkabout mini golf, we'll probably end up beating each other. So I've done 2. A mobile VR arcade came over to my house, so I could test out the arcade experience, and there was 2 of us, and you need a lot more space. You need quite a lot of space. Yeah.
To enjoy, really, you need a lot of space.
Yeah, definitely. Even like my space now that I stream in, it's still not enough. It's never enough, no matter what you do.
Definitely.
What are some of the challenges that you've faced with SynthesisVR? What are the biggest challenges that you've come across?
Um, I guess the biggest challenge initially was COVID. I guess
Yeah.
for everybody, especially in the entertainment industry. For about 6 months, we had zero income. But the good thing was we are a pretty lean team, so we were able to navigate through that. And so that's some of the challenges. And now, as I mentioned, the inflation, the war is putting a huge dent on VR locations. And for some reason, even though VR is such a fun thing to do, the consumers still haven't caught on to it. Like I would say, like how the PC gaming or the Xbox or PS4 has come in, so that's been a little challenging because you have to educate the customer still to come try VR, and maybe the nausea, some of the experiences they might have had, might have put a bad taste regarding VR. So that's something, it's challenging, but and the other thing is locations not doing VR properly and thinking VR might not work because they're trying to still sell technology instead of trying to sell it like an experience. And, so these are some of the challenges, but nothing crazy other than COVID. And, as you said, and now with the inflation and the whole war thing, but I guess human beings are a resolute bunch, so we'll get over it.
Yeah, it's hard to sell. Like, 'cause I've always worked in sales, and if you've got a great product and you're on the phone to someone, it's just like you can't sell it. Like, you need to see it, don't you? You have to
Yeah,
come in and have a look around or have a look at
definitely.
the headset itself.
Yeah, even the best trailers don't do justice to
No,
VR because if
yeah,
you see any trailer, it would look like it's nothing. Like it would look like a kid's game. But if you play it in VR, it's a whole different experience. So I guess making that leap, I guess in a way having Quests and PS2 VR, PSVR it helps the arcades because
yeah,
you might think it's not, but actually it helps because it's educating the customers what VR is.
yeah,
And then, once people get more familiar with VR and VR becomes part of their daily life, it's going to be huge.
yeah. Because I spoke. Sorry, Alan. I was just going to say I've spoken to arcades, and a lot of them have actually said people come here to try out new games before they buy them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
so
huge thing. It happened with Beat Saber as well because Beat Saber
yeah,
super hard. They got so popular, but people used to try at arcades first and then they would go and buy it.
yeah, for sure. Sorry, Roland, what are you going to say? Something?
It's just I think from an arcade point of view, it's actually a bit of a double-edged sword, which is you want VR adoption, right? You want broader adoption. On the other hand, you don't want too broad adoption, right? So the fact that the dissemination of VR to at-home users has been slower than expected, um, can indirectly actually be benefiting arcades right? It still leaves VR as something that's really unique that a lot of people haven't experienced, and a large part of what we're seeing are also team events that come in where usually you'd have one person who has some experience with VR or has been in a VR arcade and then just pitches the idea to the rest of the team who have never been in a VR arcade to, hey, this should be our team event this year. And that we're actually seeing quite a strong increase in.
And if a location would provide an experience that cannot be mimicked at home, that's the way to go. Because if you're still, because that's why I think there's a shift with free roam and all these arena-based games and stuff like that. Those are getting more and more popular because that's something that cannot be played at home. Hard to find a 20 feet by 20 feet space with all your friends to play without a pillar or something in between, or some furniture. So the locations also have to, I guess, it's not 2016 anymore where we are, oh my God, it's crazy. It's now 2023. The locations also have to adapt and start providing these experiences where they cannot be mimicked at home.
Yeah, free roam is it's crazy. Like the amount of people, like you said, you can get involved. Because my cousin was saying he went to an VR arcade. He's got the Quest 2, and then he goes, the game wasn't. I don't remember play, but he just said the game wasn't all that. But he said it was so much fun just because he was in the same space as his friends.
Yeah.
and
That makes it a lot.
yeah, and that's the biggest attraction, I think. Once people get the bug, you do get quite a few regular customers in.
Yeah, definitely. When we were running VR, we had a crazy couple that wanted to finish Arizona Sunshine, so they would come in every day in their Bentley, and they would play Arizona Sunshine together, like for like hours.
Yeah,
So we've had some customers like that.
yeah, when they probably had enough money to buy the arcade themselves, right?
I know, definitely.
What can you share, like, about the future of synthesis? What have you got planned that you can share? Obviously, a lot of it's not, you're not going to be able to share, but like, is there anything that you could share with us?
We're gonna do something crazy that's, I think, going to be a huge impact, I would say. So we are planning to release that within the next month.
Ooh.
So it's gonna be something really soon. Because we also, like, because of all the issues that I mentioned, we've also rethought like a whole the business model and things like that, and we are planning to do something. So that's something really nice and exciting. And then
That was
I guess
just
that's
big enough to get me really interested in what it is.
yeah. So that's something I think you would know in about a couple of weeks or maybe 2 to 4 weeks. So we are partnering on that. And then I'm not sure if you've ever heard, but we now support, like, Synthesis supports like the focus tree and the Pico, like the enterprise, where you can like use Synthesis and pretty much automate most of the functions if you have an LB licensing. So that's something we worked on, and it's worked very well. And hopefully also we are planning to support like the streaming using Quark XR with these devices as well. So that's something we're working on. And we're pretty, even though entertainment has been our bread and butter, yes, we might move into, not move, but also focus on the enterprise edition as well, because of VR now becoming a trend in enterprise for training and stuff like that. So these are the things that we are focusing on.
Yeah. Sorry?
I just said very nice.
Yeah. I mean, VR training in VR is catching on. It's getting.
It's huge.
It's
huge.
Yeah. A few years. I think another thing that people did during the pandemic was start thinking about doing, like, creating actual training in VR, immersive training. My friend, he's a firefighter, and yeah, he's done some bits and pieces. He said it's amazing, and there's no like, the risk of life is like cut down by like so much when you're not actually, well, to zero basically, isn't it? Really, when you're not in that actual scenario. So
no, even large companies like Emirates,
yeah,
they are training their employees, or they are the hostesses and everyone in VR, because it actually improves by 60%, and also they're reducing costs by almost half of it, because they don't have to arrange an actual plane and stuff like that. Everything is in VR, and you can also, the other cool thing with training is you can do it over and over again, because imagine if you do a surgery training, you can't cut the guy open all the time, so but with VR you can do it as many times as you want. So
yeah.
so it helps with the repetition part of it as well.
Yeah, and like you said, so did you say it was 60% more kind of people learn?
Yeah, the retention rate is much higher, and even in education it's becoming big as well, because when you're learning in books or with videos, it does, sometimes you might not concentrate, but with VR you're actually doing it. So they've actually, the retention rate, people passing exams have been much more high.
Yeah.
And there's a company in Germany actually that I was talking to recently, and what they did was they basically, along the German curriculum, built biology classes for schools. And I don't know if you've ever seen sort of Miss Frizzle's Magic School Bus, which shrinks down and lets you go into the human body and kind of explore it. But it's basically that you're sort of going through the different parts of the person and really seeing, like, okay, these are the red blood cells, white blood cells, mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I've considered that there's some like human anatomy ones as well, and I've done little
Yeah.
demos and stuff. It's so cool. Like,
Yeah, we have
it's-
something called Victoria XR. We partnered with them, and they have like a biology thing. We have with human anatomy, frogs, pig, catfish, stuff like that. So it's pretty cool because now you can. Because I did biology when I was in high school and I hated it, but this way, so
Yeah.
this it makes it much more interesting.
And it saves hundreds and hundreds of little frogs' lives, doesn't it? Because it's all in VR.
Yeah, all in VR.
Before we get too sidetracked on biology, let's bring it back to,
Yeah.
to VR arcades.
What do you think are the most important factors that make a VR arcade successful?
I think the first thing would be customer service. It's not about technology. As I said, running a VR arcade is about a social experience. So if you can provide that, make people come back again. The technology and that would take care of itself because most of the people who come to VR arcades, I would say even 80% of them are like all newbies or who have not tried VR or doing it for the first or second time. So, they are going to be amazed by the technology and how VR is. And, so the main thing is customer service. And the other mistake that a lot of VR arcades do is they try to put like 50, 100, 200 games and try to let the customers, but you're not selling games, you're selling an experience. So it's about selecting a handful of games, making sure that your employees are aware of it, and training the employees properly so that they can guide the customers and selling them an experience saying, hey, do you want to save the world from zombies? Try rotten apple, something like that. So, so you got to play to the crowd. You got to see how the people are, what sort of experience they like, instead of trying to put something that you would like for them. So, so that's, I think, the key. And another thing I noticed is employees do get a little lazy when it comes to games. So they always put the same game over and over again, because if you see even now it's 2023, some of the games that were popular in 2016 are still popular, even though there are so many other good games. So the owners, I think, should make an effort, or the operators, to introduce new games, train the employees, and then, make sure those games are in your portfolio and, they can try different options, and concentrate on parties, birthday parties, because those are huge, and events, that's going to be the biggest difference.
Yes.
I think in our case, it's almost a third of our arcade revenue actually comes from team events, birthday parties, these kind of things. So they actually make out a big chunk of the work.
It's always, because even when we were running, like I would say 70% of the revenue comes with parties, events and stuff, because kids love it and, they want to impress their friends, things like that. And also for corporate events, but VR works very well.
Yeah, I did see.
One of the sort of, before we move on, one of the other things you said that I thought was really interesting is that you sort of really build it into an experience. That it's not the games you're selling; it's the experience of sort of the joint social activity.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that we do, even though it's not entirely necessary, but it's been working really well for us, is when people come in, I think, Sean, I think you instructed our game masters to actually do that, is, the people sit down and we walk them through the different games, trying to figure out their likes and dislikes. And generally, you'd be able to sort of, within the first, I'd say, 15 seconds, be able to tell, okay, this is probably going to be the right game, and But I actually think this whole introducing each of the titles, this is what this is about, this is what that's about, what would suit your palate the most, is actually quite a bit of, I think adds quite a bit to the experience.
Definitely.
Yes, yeah. There is one arcade that I've been talking to that does it very much like a 5-star kind of restaurant experience, and they're doing really well. Like, they did very well, and they said we stay with them the whole time. Sometimes we play with them. There's not loads of games on offer, but what we select with they do a lot of stringent testing to make sure that it fits up to their standards. And I've even seen arcades with, like, on their webpage, we've got 500 games, And I'm just like, how do you choose? It's yeah. I think a smaller selection of good quality is always better than people looking at a web page and they'll just be like, right, this is too much for my brain, and then just go somewhere else.
Or they might pick a game that's not suitable for an arcade or playing together. They might have a bad experience, and that's going to reflect on your location.
Yeah.
So you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. What would you say is the one biggest challenge for someone that's, say, opening up a VR arcade or owns a VR arcade?
Not sure how to say like a one big challenge, but I guess getting their location. Yeah, I guess getting their location popular would be the biggest challenge, because people have to know. Because don't think if you open a VR location, people are gonna come in. Like even before you open a location, you got to make sure you got to market. But that doesn't mean you got to put tons of money in Google and Facebook ads and stuff like that. You got to be clever about it. Make sure you involve the local community, the other businesses. You can do some joint promotion that works very well. So if somebody goes to a bowling center that's very popular, you could say, but if you bowl here, you can get 10% at this VR place. So doing some of these kind of things would be, so I guess getting people in would be the hardest thing. Yeah. But if they do it right and if they plan it properly, I think it would be a huge success.
Yeah.
Well, we're sorry, go ahead, Shabeer.
And VR is a hands-on business. It's not like something you just open and you forget about it. It's a lot of hands-on, so you got to be ready for that.
Yeah. I think Chun can talk a lot about how hands-on he needs to be when it comes to our operations.
Chun's been very quiet. Now he's going to have a lot to say.
No, it's fine. I'm just enjoying listening to you guys, and I mean, if I'm needed, I will be there. But Roland speaks for me, so everything is fine for now.
No, I mean, I'd actually be curious to your opinion to the same question that Serge mentioned too. Biggest operational challenge that you faced?
I guess, yeah.
I mean, at the beginning, I think it was the technology. I mean, we talked about it early on. You really have a learning curve, and at the beginning, nothing is working like it should. And there's a lot of challenges that you have to tackle and that you have to overcome before it works smoothly. But when it does, everything is great. But I think at the beginning, if anyone is listening and is thinking that, hey, I want to start a VR arcade business, I think the technology part was, a really tough topic to overcome.
Especially with the Vive sensors, it could go crazy, but now it has improved a lot. And also with the inside-out tracking, that has helped a lot.
Yeah. Is there... Go on, Chan, sorry.
No, nothing. I was just, thinking about if, to ask Shabeer as well, if arcades are trying to open a new location, do you think that it is worth it to also consider free roam at this moment? Or do you think that it's music for the future?
I think you have to do free roam at this moment. It's not, as I said, it's not 2016 or 17 anymore. People have headset, they know what VR is. So I think free roam should be a big thing.
Yeah, I do speak to a lot of arcades that are trying to smash wall downs, get rid of pillars in the middle of rooms, and try and make free roam work, because it just opens up a lot more options. And plus, it's the whole thing of what, like we said before, with in the group and you're walking around together. That makes a much better kind of selling point to have everything under one roof.
It makes it much more realistic, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I haven't done a lot of free roam stuff. I've done a little bit here and there, but not like, I'm always in my VR space. So I will be in the studios at VRilliant next month. So I'll be doing free roam gaming with these guys, I guess.
You can be in one of our QA sessions, Serge, and then you get to play it for hours and hours.
It's meant to be a holiday.
Nah, forget about that.
Oh no. Do you have any other questions, Roland?
No, but one thing that I would actually add is that, right, to what Shabeer mentioned, that if you're opening a new arcade or opening a new location, you really need to market it. We're kind of going through exactly this phase with our second location of, it's open, we are marketing it, we are getting the games in, but obviously in the back of your mind, it's always what can you do on top to sort of, inform the local scene that your arcade exists now, because as you mentioned, right, it's not going to be you open up and people are going to go like, oh, I have desperately wanted to book this VR experience my whole life, finally. But you actually really have to build awareness. And I think, right, next to sort of, right, social media, Google, Facebook, right, the good way is actually to market your locations. Actually, one, go to the nearby businesses that already exist in your area and just ask, hey, can I deposit a couple of our flyers here? We just opened up, go around, introduce yourself that you exist, to generate some word of mouth. And the second part is actually just really very classic kind of flyers, where, distribute flyers, let people know that you exist and your arcade is there. And I actually think
cool way
quite a bit.
Another nice way is also doing like these small events or doing private events, or like schools. We did some for schools and stuff, and we would then distribute flyers there and all. So that's also a good way to get your local community involved. But a huge mistake locations make is they think if there are multiple universities or colleges, they might get customers, but that's not true, because college kids are busy doing something else. So, and also they don't have the money to spend on VR. So it's mostly for families, kids, corporate. So your target audience is totally different. It's not your couch gamer who's going to pay PS4 who's going to come to VR. So you got to keep that in mind, because a lot of locations, they do make that mistake saying, I have like so many universities or so many colleges in this vicinity and I'm going to open a location there. That's not your target audience.
Yeah,
I think that's actually really, really sound advice, because it also fits our demographic, which is that we really haven't seen a lot of students.
Yeah, we even offered free, like if you're a student here, we had a huge popular university next to our arcade. We've got just a handful. So they're busy drinking and partying. So VR is not for them.
Do you have any other questions? Do you have any questions at all, Chun?
I mean, maybe not directly to Synthesis, but Shabeer as a person, do you also enjoy playing VR games in your free time? Do you even have this kind of options? And if you do you have a favorite VR game maybe?
Nothing like favorite, but I do play because we do a lot of testing and stuff. So I do get to play the games and stuff. But now I played so many games, it's hard for me to like favorite kind of game. But I do love, like, from those days I used to like Brookhaven a lot. I loved Pistol Whip. We used to play Beat Saber all the time, but Pistol Whip was one of my favorite games. And Arizona Sunshine was, hopefully Rotten Apple would be there now. But the newer games, I'm not a huge fan of like playing it all the time, because I'm mostly like testing it and stuff like that. So when I used to play, it was the older games that I'm a big fan of.
Yeah. What headsets?
I love Blast-On. I like Blast-On.
Blast-On, yeah.
Really good game.
Is there any particular game you're looking forward to, like that's coming up in the next 6 months?
Plush, I would say.
That is a very good answer.
Well, Shabeer, it's been great talking to you, and you're giving your insights into how Synthesis started, and like all about working in the industry as well. It's been great hearing what you have to say. It's been a learning experience for me as well, definitely. I'm sure for everyone else and everyone watching.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here, and I'm so happy to share my thoughts. And I'm sure Roland mostly is aware of all this, so it's cool.
Yeah. Right. Thank you everyone for watching. We will be back in 2 weeks, and it will be possibly having another guest in, and we'll talk about VR arcades and how they run and the industry in general and what's been going on. So thanks a lot for watching. Thank you to Shabeer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roland. And Mr. Chan.
Very much, guys. Thanks for being a great host, Serge. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Cheers, guys. Catch you next time. Yeah, see you in 2 weeks.